Tiahleigh Palmer was a 12-year-old girl, standing on the cusp of life with boundless potential. She was, in many ways, an ordinary teenager, yet she was destined to meet a horrific end, becoming a victim of unspeakable violence. Her biological mother, fearing for Tiahleigh's life due to an abusive husband with whom she lived, made the agonizing decision to place her daughter into the care of the Child Protection Center. She genuinely believed this act would safeguard her child and pave the way for a brighter future. But tragically, the loving intentions of a mother only worsened the situation for young Tia, as her family and friends affectionately called her. What seemed like a fresh start quickly devolved into a nightmare. It turned out that the abusive husband had actually coerced Cindy, Tiahleigh's birth mother, into handing Tia over to the child protection system. Cindy truly believed she was doing the right thing, forced by desperate circumstances to save her daughter from a dangerous home. As a victim of domestic violence herself, Cindy was determined to spare her child the same cruel fate. She simply wasn't in a position to properly raise the girl. Due to the tumultuous family dynamics, Tiahleigh had become a challenging child. She often ran away from home to escape her parents' conflicts and had a tendency to wander. In January 2015, the 12-year-old girl, by the decision of the Child Protection Center, was sent to live with what was considered a wonderful family, the Thorburns, on their rural property in Chambers Flat, about 40 minutes drive from Brisbane, Australia. Chambers Flat is a quiet, cozy community, home to around 2,500 people. Tiahleigh's new foster parents were Rick and Julie Thorburn, along with their two sons. The eldest, John, age 19, and the youngest, Trent, 18. By this time, Tiahleigh had already moved through several foster families. For one reason or another, she hadn't settled, often due to her difficult nature. Some perceived her as quite conflicted. The Thorburn household was no exception. Tiahleigh was reportedly unhappy about living with two teenage boys who were significantly older than her. However, young Tiahleigh, unfortunately, had no choice in the matter. At this point, Rick and Julie, Tiahleigh's new foster parents, had been married for over 25 years. Rick, formerly a truck driver, had suffered a severe back injury, forcing him to shift to lighter work. He had since established a fast food business operating from a van and also managed his own horse farm. His wife, Julie, ran a daycare service from their home. The family was widely regarded as highly respectable, decent, and exemplary throughout the entire area. This is why the Child Protection Service had chosen them to care for Tiahleigh. For 4 months, the girl appeared to integrate well into her new family and continued to live there until the tragic events that unfolded. She attended Morrison State High School, which was a mere 20-minute drive from the house. Life, it seemed, was finally looking up. Everyone appeared to be getting used to her, and she was getting along with her new household members. But beneath this seemingly rosy exterior, not everything was as it appeared. October 30th, 2015, began like any other day for the Thorburn family. Rick drove his foster daughter to school, then returned home to do some repairs on his car. A couple of hours later, he received a call from the school informing him that Tiahleigh had not shown up for classes. This wasn't the first time the girl had run away. Given her difficult childhood, she was accustomed to escaping her problems in this manner. However, this time, she couldn't be found, which was unusual as she typically returned on her own fairly quickly or was easily located. Rick posted on social media, describing the situation and pleading for help from anyone who knew Tiahleigh's whereabouts. But his request went unanswered. The girl's foster family knew she had been excitedly anticipating Halloween and had even prepared a costume, so her disappearance right before the holiday struck them as particularly odd. They contacted the police, and the teenager was officially reported missing. Yet, authorities didn't launch an extensive search, believing she would soon return, just as she had after previous runaways. Less than a week passed since the day the foster child reportedly vanished. Then, in the early morning of November 5th, 2015, police received an alarming call. A local fisherman had contacted emergency services to report finding a body in the reeds in the shallows of the Palmer River. The location was approximately 30 kilometers south of where Tiahleigh was last seen a week earlier. The elements and local wildlife had taken a severe toll, leaving the body in a state of advanced decomposition. The police who arrived at the scene couldn't even accurately determine the body's sex, let alone establish its identity. They could only presumptively deduce it was a teenager. The body was in a horrific state. This gruesome discovery had no clothes on, save for underwear. The body was sent for autopsy and forensic examination. After comparing it with missing persons in the area, police initially suspected it could be 12-year-old Tiahleigh, who had been missing for about a week. This grim suspicion was later confirmed through lab DNA testing, validating the police's worst fears. During the examination, experts concluded that the injuries, initially mistaken for animal bites, were most likely inflicted by a person. The girl had become a victim of monstrous violence. The case was reclassified as murder, and a full investigation began. Considering Rick Thorburn was the last person who purportedly saw Tiahleigh alive, law enforcement officers started their inquiry by interviewing him. From the very beginning, his behavior and conflicting testimony aroused suspicion, though all of it needed to be thoroughly investigated and proven. It was decided to also speak with the other members of the foster family. Perhaps one of them held crucial information. However, initial interrogations of family members yielded nothing useful. Everyone corroborated Rick's account, claiming he had dropped his daughter off at school at 7:50 a.m. and she hadn't been seen since. Following this, investigators went to the school to verify the family statements. And here, they managed to uncover more valuable information. Detectives interviewed all the students in Tiahleigh's 7th grade class, her friends, and her teachers. In total, over 100 people were questioned. It quickly became clear that absolutely no one had seen her come to class that day, or even near the school grounds. After reviewing the CCTV footage from both outside and inside the school on the day of the girl's disappearance, detectives were convinced that Tiahleigh had never arrived at school, nor was she seen at the entrance, which was highly perplexing. Where could the girl have gone then? However, there were some students, friends of Tiahleigh's, who claimed that their classmate had serious problems within her foster family. One of them recounted how Tiahleigh had begged her to take her home, saying her foster parents were mistreating her and she was anticipating major trouble. But her friend, due to her young age, couldn't make such a decision for her family or bring Tiahleigh home, and she didn't realize how truly dire the situation was. Soon after, Tiahleigh met her terrible death. This plea had occurred literally a week before the girl disappeared. The friend believed these events might be connected. However, Tiahleigh had not specified precisely what the foster family was doing to her. After speaking with other students, police concluded that Tiahleigh had no enemies, and there was no one else who could have harmed her. Suspicions surrounding the foster family intensified, and investigators continued to scrutinize the Thorburns. But the foster family members adamantly denied all accusations of domestic violence against them. They claimed Tiahleigh was simply fabricating stories, just as she had with previous foster families from whom she had run away and complained about. Police verified this information and confirmed that Tiahleigh indeed had a history of running away and was considered a difficult teenager. All people close to the family, including neighbors, maintained that the Thorburns were an exemplary family. Many locals entrusted their children to the Thorburns for their private kindergarten, and no one believed that such decent people could do anything to Tiahleigh. Everyone thought she had simply run away, invented a story about mistreatment as before, gotten herself into some kind of trouble, and fallen victim to an attack. So, the police, having no immediate reason to suspect the family, left them alone. They, too, considered the family exemplary and began looking elsewhere for the cause of the murder, while the foster family continued to operate their home-based daycare. During the investigation, detectives also interviewed approximately 300 registered sex offenders in the area who might have been involved in sexual assaults. But even this exhaustive effort failed to yield any significant leads or even the slightest clues about what might have happened to the teenager. Most of these individuals had solid alibis, and some no longer resided in the area, making it impossible to identify suspects from this list. On December 4th, 2015, shoes believed to belong to Tiahleigh were found 100 meters from where the body was discovered, along with her backpack, which the girl had taken to school. The story became so sensational that it garnered widespread public attention. It was broadcast on numerous TV channels across Australia, and gradually, the entire country learned about the case. Several public demonstrations were held before the funeral. People demanded that those responsible for such a terrible death be found, a death the girl clearly didn't deserve. The biological mother of the deceased organized pickets, demanding answers from the police about her daughter's death, and appeared on television to galvanize public awareness. The woman was outraged that Child Protective Services had failed to safeguard the daughter she had entrusted to them. This public anger partly explained why over 600 people attended the girl's funeral, most of whom had never met Tiahleigh in life, but came to pay their respects on November 14th. Many mourners wore white and purple t-shirts adorned with hearts and Tiahleigh's name. Purple was her favorite color. About 400 white roses were placed on her casket, and purple balloons were released into the sky as the hearse took her to a private cremation. 5 months had passed since Tiahleigh Palmer's murder, yet law enforcement officials still had no solid leads. A substantial reward was offered for any information that could be provided on the case. A hefty sum of 250,000 Australian dollars, which is approximately 160,000 US dollars. Tiahleigh's mother went on television, desperately pleading for help. She implored eyewitnesses to come forward, as well as those who committed this terrible crime to confess. In addition to the reward, the police guaranteed that any accomplice who did not commit the murder and was the first to provide such information would be exempt from prosecution. However, even this significant incentive wasn't enough to uncover anything new. The police received several calls from vigilant citizens, but none provided any useful information. Summer 2016 arrived, and the police still didn't even have a prime suspect. Detectives interviewed one perpetrator after another with a history of sexual abuse. The advanced decomposition of the body when it was found left forensic experts with virtually no clues, so investigators didn't even know the precise cause of death. The only theory they could formulate was that the girl had been strangled due to a fractured hyoid bone. The most plausible version at that time was that the abduction had been committed by a passing motorist near the school, because the specific area where parents typically dropped off their children wasn't covered by CCTV cameras. Anything could have happened to the girl there, but this was, again, just a police theory. The reward of 250,000 Australian dollars, due to anyone providing information that helped catch the criminal, also remained unclaimed. It wasn't until May 2016, after more than 6 months of tireless work, that the state police department received an anonymous tip. The caller stated he had a crucial story to tell about Tiahleigh and the Thorburn foster family she had been placed with. According to the unknown witness, the Thorburns had been actively seeking a problem child from the very beginning. This allowed them to receive increased financial benefits for fostering the girl. The informant asserted that the family harbored no genuine affection for Tiahleigh. Their interest in her was purely mercenary. The anonymous caller also confidently stated that all members of this family could be involved in what happened to Tiahleigh. Unfortunately, this person said nothing else and immediately hung up. His identity was never established, preventing investigators from obtaining additional crucial information. In light of this call, the police decided to revisit the theory of the foster family's involvement in the murder. After all, at the very beginning of the investigation, they had received information from students who spoke about domestic violence at the Thorburns' home. But those initial opinions couldn't be definitively confirmed at the time and have been dismissed. Now, detectives decided to approach the Foster family once more with renewed scrutiny. Verifying the anonymous caller's claims, police re-interviewed some of Tiahleigh's school friends. One of the victim's friends reported that Tiahleigh had confided in her about an intimate relationship with the youngest of the family's sons, 19-year-old Trent, who was considered a local heartthrob. The young girl, due to her age, didn't fully comprehend what was happening and genuinely believed they were in a relationship, as Trent had told her. She was even in love with him and loved the horses on the farm. But at the same time, she was deeply intimidated by both Trent and the entire family, which fueled her desire to run away from them. It is highly probable that in addition to sexual abuse, there was also severe physical abuse of the girl within the house. These words from the student absolutely demanded verification, but repeated interrogations of family members still yielded no results. All of them continued to adamantly deny the suspicions and accusations against them, especially those concerning the harassment of a minor. But given the serious suspicions against the family, the Thorburns' daycare permit was revoked and their foster family license was suspended. Law enforcement officers took a decisive step. They installed listening devices in the family's home. The information they received was shocking, almost daily, systematically dismantling the image of a decent family that the spouses and their sons had so meticulously maintained. For instance, investigators discovered that on October 29, 2015, the family held a crucial meeting, the very day before the girl disappeared. At this meeting, Trent informed his mother and father that Tiahleigh was experiencing a suspicious stomachache. This immediately sparked concern and suspicion among the parents about a possible accidental pregnancy of the 12-year-old girl. The Foster family, it turned out, had learned about their youngest son's intimate relationship with Tiahleigh shortly before her disappearance. Trent had admitted to having intercourse with her when no one else was home. During the wiretap, Trent himself was heard stating that he had engaged in intercourse with his foster sister on multiple occasions. Their illicit relationship had lasted for about 10 months, spanning almost the entire period Tiahleigh was under their care. Eventually, the then 19-year-old Trent approached his parents when suspicions arose that Tiahleigh might be pregnant. He was terrified that everyone would discover their relationship, as the 7-year age difference effectively made his actions criminal. The head of the family, Rick, chillingly told his son not to worry. He would sort this problem out. Judging by the Thorburns' intercepted conversations, the girl feared her adoptive father immensely, like fire itself. Most of all, she was terrified of being alone with him. Apparently, these weren't random fears. The rest of the family also treated him with no less apprehension. It became clear that beneath the guise of a decent family man, he was hiding an extremely cruel and dangerous persona, which was later undeniably proven. That same evening, after their disturbing discussion, Rick ordered all other family members out of the house, remaining alone with his adopted daughter. When the family returned a couple of hours later, as agreed, the girl was nowhere to be found. When questioned about her disappearance, the head of the family calmly replied that she had run away and that the problems with her had been resolved. He added chillingly, now she definitely wouldn't tell anyone anything. The family began to fear that their father had killed her, given his unnerving certainty that she would remain silent. When one of the brothers attempted to check her room, their father strictly forbade it, doing so in a threatening manner. None of the Thorburns dared to contradict Rick, and everyone simply dropped the subject. It became painfully obvious that Rick's story about dropping his adopted daughter off at school and her subsequently disappearing was a blatant lie. In reality, he couldn't have done it, as by that point Tiahleigh was no longer in the house and most likely dead. But precisely what Rick had done to her remained unknown, as he concealed this information even from his own family. While listening to conversations in the house, detectives heard Rick instructing the others what to say and do to evade police suspicions, and they obediently complied. Law enforcement officers first called the sons and their mother in for questioning, believing they would be the easiest to break, and gradually, as the police unveiled the information they possessed, they began to talk. The more detectives spoke with them, the more they understood the dark truth of what had transpired in their home. Rick had meticulously orchestrated things to appear as if he was simply trying to protect his family. After carefully reviewing the school's external surveillance footage, the police were finally convinced that the head of the Thorburn family had gone to extreme lengths to cover up his crime and substantiate his lies to the detectives. For instance, that morning, he indeed drove towards the school, and his car was captured on several CCTV cameras. But none of them showed the girl getting out of the car. After this damning evidence, the Thorburn family was engulfed in a storm of criticism and suspicion. Julie and John were accused of giving false testimony and attempting to mislead the investigation. Trent was charged with violence, and Rick was charged with first-degree murder and similar attempts to confuse the investigation. According to detectives, Rick intentionally killed the girl and mutilated her body so severely to prevent forensic experts and the police from confirming her identity. And this partly worked because initially it wasn't even clear what gender the deceased was. Fortunately, however, it was not possible to completely prevent the identification of the body. Apparently, he had no idea that DNA testing existed. Law enforcement officers also had every reason to believe that Rick was involved in brutal physical and sexual abuse of all children in his care, including his own. In total, 9 charges were brought against the man, some of which were not even related to the murdered girl. Trent, meanwhile, was accused of incest and perjury. The family's car, which shockingly turned out to have been sold immediately after the girl's disappearance, was confiscated from a new owner for inspection. Blood stains were found inside. All of this took a severe toll on Rick's health. He lost consciousness on the day of his arrest while in the pretrial detention center. His condition was so critical that doctors were forced to induce a coma. But after a couple of days in the hospital, he regained consciousness. Doctors speculated that he had deliberately provoked this state by taking medication, but fortunately, this monster could not escape responsibility for his heinous crimes. Finally, the Thorburn family appeared in court one by one. The sheer cynicism and cruelty of what had happened utterly shocked the public. People literally wanted to tear apart the entire family that was capable of such inhuman cruelty towards a young girl. The prosecution's case was so compelling that the defense was hardly taken seriously at the trial. Julie and John told the court that they pleaded guilty to all charges and agreed to testify against Trent and Rick. The jury, with minimal discussion, agreed that all members of the family were indeed real monsters and guilty, though on different counts. As a result, John was sentenced to 3 months in prison. His mother, Julie, received a term of 1.5 years for perjury. Trent, who also confessed, was sentenced to 4 years for incest, perjury, and attempting to obstruct justice. Today, the mother and sons are free, including Trent, who committed the despicable acts against Tiahleigh. He was released on January 19, 2018, after serving only 16 months in custody. The case's most violent character, Rick, who admitted during the trial to brutally murdering Tiahleigh in a barn and hiding her body in a river to save his son and family's reputation, among other crimes, was given a life sentence in May 2018, with the possibility of parole no earlier than 20 years. The sheer horror revealed by the case materials didn't just lead to public outrage and media frenzies across the country. It prompted the Australian legal system to critically review the laws governing the protection of children in foster care. As a direct result, the system was modernized to implement stricter checks, specifically aimed at identifying potential criminal offenders and guardians who have a history of problems with the law. Furthermore, several new protocols were introduced that applied both to challenging teenagers and the couples who were considering adopting them, aiming to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. If you found my work insightful, please subscribe to the channel, support this video with a like, and let's discuss this harrowing story in the comment section below. Thank you all and goodbye.